If you ask me what I remember about Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest, I would tell you 3 things. 1, everyone's in love with Elizabeth for some reason. 2, squid people. And 3, there's a really great fight on a giant wheel. Naturally, it is the last one we're going to be talking about. The wheel fight on Isla Cruces in Dead Man's Chest is a really spectacular set piece, and it's so much fun. But actually that pretty much sums up my opinion of the movie in microcosm. There's so much to like about it. But I wish that the rest of the scene was stronger. It starts weak, some of the sections go on for too long, the editing is interesting, and the script lets it down at some key moments, and that's a real shame. If you watch my Curse of the Black Pearl video where I talked about the fight in the blacksmith shop between Jack and Will, I called it a perfect pirate fight. Well, if we're going to continue the theme, it's a patchy pirate fight, and not in the nautical eye patch kind of way. My name is Jill Bearup and my hobby is stage combat, which is to say fighting people with swords or staffs or your fists or whatever, but hopefully in ways that convey character, story and intent, look good, and also don't actually hurt the other person. And on this channel we talk about fights in media from that perspective. Now the plot of Dead Man's Chest is actually very simple. Who is going to get to the chest of Davy Jones and his heart contained therein first? The people looking for the chest are, in no particular order, Davy Jones, cursed squid captain of the Flying Dutchman, whose heart it actually is, Cutler Beckett of the East India Trading Company, who wants to control the seas, James Norrington, former Commodore, now a drunk whose life has been wrecked, wants to give the chest to Beckett to restore his honour. Honour! Sorry, I've been watching Avatar: The Last Airbender recently. Carry on. Will Turner, whose father Bootstrap Bill is serving on the Dutchman and Will has vowed to save him. And of course, Jack Sparrow, who needs leverage over Jones to stop him from taking his soul in his ship because Jack, silly idiot that he is, has made a deal and time's up. You'll notice that Elizabeth is conspicuous by her absence from this list of people who have a compelling need for the chest, and that is why she ends up stuck with the comic relief. And also fainting hilariously because nobody cares. Anyway, like the treasure cave fight in Curse of the Black Pearl, the Isla Cruces fight comes near the end of Dead Man's Chest. We have located the chest on Isla Cruces with the help of Elizabeth and the compass and Elizabeth's desires. Will shows up with the key, 3 of our main characters re-establish their motivations, they fight for the key, Elizabeth shouts at them, they fight on the beach, Elizabeth shouts at them. The comic relief steals the chest, Jack runs to the ruined mill, the Dutchman's crew show up, our main characters fight up the stairs, on the roof, Jack turns Norrington on Will, a giant wheel gets involved, Elizabeth and the comedy pirates fight the Dutchman's crew. Eventually Jack gets the key and opens the chest, but it's Norrington who eventually gets the heart and the empty chest which he uses to draw off the baddies.
Don't wait for me.
Side note, I rewatched the first 3 movies again and Norrington is now my favourite character. And it's a darn shame he didn't get more screen time and general character development. I mean, the choreography tries its best, but the script does not have a lot of time for him, even when he's doing dramatic heroics. To explain the problems and the good points in this fight, we're going to look at it in 3 broad sections, which I have labelled Section 1, rushed and unsatisfying. Section 2, nearly brilliant but folds at the final hurdle. Section 3, unmitigated fun, good job everyone. Same scene, different sections, different purposes, wildly varying quality. Dead Man's Chest, everyone! The setup is a 3-way sword fight between Jack Sparrow, Will Turner and James Norrington. All of them need the key to open the chest. Simple. But after an excellent Mexican, or I guess Caribbean, standoff, we do not start strong. I know there will be later shenanigans which are much more fun, but it feels like they were just trying to get this section done as fast as possible so that we can get on to the more fun things. Which, all things considered with the production schedule, might have been what happened. But every section of a fight should have a purpose. Ideally, it should have multiple purposes. Character development, showing off impressive choreography or cinematography or scenery, getting the characters from point A to point B, world building, setting up dialogue, whatever. This section, get the characters from point A, beside the chest, to point B, on the beach. And that would be fine if there was something to go along with it, but there isn't. There's just Elizabeth shouting angrily, so no particular character development, and while the choreography is perfectly fine, it's almost completely obscured by the editing. On this channel we call the sections into which fights are divided for learning and indeed shooting purposes phrases. Phrases because they're like dialogue. Or music. The first section has 2 phrases. One of 5 moves and one of 8 moves. The first phrase has a grand total of 6 shots for just 5 moves. And the 7th shot is our characters running to get them in position for the second phrase, which has 7 shots for 8 moves, and you can use fast cuts and indeed short phrases for lots of things like feeling out defenses or having a lot of dialogue in your fight or any number of things, but that's not what's happening here. This doesn't feel intentional, it just feels perfunctory. It's not impressive swordplay because we're too close in to see it, we're not getting pretty location shots because ditto, and the edits are so fast that you might miss the character details. And there are some character details. Details like James Norrington may have his focus on the key, but he's clever enough to slow down his other opponent any chance he gets. By contrast, the blacksmith shop fight uses its relatively short cuts to move us around the cramped feeling space, and it attenuates the pacing with dialogue. You have the 1, 2, 3 second shots, but you also have the 4, 5, 6 second shots. The editing is still pretty busy when it comes to the fight, but other things do happen, like talking, like reactions. A 2-second shot of our 3 characters running does not really have the same effect. After such a strong, tense standoff, when they actually start fighting, it starts weak. And that's a shame. And then, after a mostly unreadable section, we have this longer section where 3 stunt performers circle around fighting in the background while Elizabeth shouts at them. It is, I suppose, an attempt at character development for Elizabeth, and to be fair, that bit where she pretends to faint and nobody cares is quite funny, but it goes on just a bit too long and it robs us of any sense of urgency. We're mostly not going to be talking about the sections with Elizabeth and the sections with the Dutchman's crew in them, and I do understand the need to cut between the 3 groups in the scene. But Elizabeth and the comedy pirates kind of run the pacing into a wall for this section. What you want and what you have in the rest of the scene is a nice undulation of tension which rises and falls while still rising overall. What you have here is more like the fluid fighting that you get from people with years of training is all very well, but basically they're just moving scenery right now. Which you can tell because there's a lot of spinning in a circle and we're not really allowed to feel particularly engaged with it. And while that is about to improve, that's where the other deeper problem with the movie shows up. We get back in close to our 3 main men as they fight and snatch the key from each other. Their motivations are clear, the editing is slightly less frenetic, it works fine. There are still lots of very rapid shots, but they are interspersed with slightly longer takes which let us breathe just a little. And the variety makes it nicer to watch. And sand in face. Good use of environment there, James. But
by your leave, Mr. Turner.
One of the things that I didn't like about Dead Man's Chest is that it focuses on Jack a lot. Not quite to the complete exclusion of the other characters, but definitely to the point where it feels like everyone is mostly important in relation to Jack. See that moment? It does a great job of reinforcing the James secretly hates Will point that Jack will be taking advantage of very soon. But a better line would have been nice. Or just some more dialogue in this section in general. I mean, it's fun, but there's plenty of fun going around. I feel like they could have cut it down or made it more meaningful. Possibly that's my other tagline for this movie. Dead Man's Chest. Cut it down or make it more meaningful. For a good example of character via fight, as soon as Jack is in possession of the key, he runs away. We move the action from the flat open beach to somewhere that he can gain some kind of material advantage from his environment, and we have the stair climbing and roof fights. Character purpose. Recall that Jack is tricksy and never in favour of a straight fight. Plot purpose. Ring a bell while buckling your swash, alerting the Dutchman's crew to your location. Other purposes. Show off your lavish Caribbean scenery by climbing the old building and fighting on the roof, getting nearer to the wheel that is one of your most impressive action set pieces. See? Many things in one. It can be done, but apparently only if Jack is involved. I'm mostly not going to speak to the specifics of the choreography in this video, but the section in the mill is fun, makes good use of the environment, and the phrases are necessarily short because one misstep and you're gonna fall. We still get a maximum of 2 things happening in any one shot before we cut, but you know, it's okay, it works fine in this section. And when we get up to the top of the ruined building, we get, 3, 4, 4.5 second shots before we cut, which means that we get to see much more of the actual sword work, and when we cut in, we spend more time on their faces and so have more time to connect to them emotionally. So that's nice. But as I said, Pirates of the Caribbean 2 has Jack Sparrow as a very main character, to the point that it seems to forget that we might also like to see the other characters too. Norrington disarms Jack on the roof and is about to kill him when...
Who was it that at the very moment you had a notorious pirate safely behind bars, saw fit to free said pirate and take your dearly beloved all to himself?
Jack convinces Norrington that Will is responsible for ruining his life and uses this to make good his escape. Another excellent character moment for Jack, and I'm not against those, but...
Unfortunately, Mr. Turner, he's right!
Norrington is so enraged at Will that he doesn't immediately pursue Jack, instead choosing to turn around and fight Will. And here's where we fall down, because this should be a pivotal, or at least important character moment for Norrington. His sole goal to this point in the movie has been to get his life and his career and his honor back, but here, enraged by Jack's words, beating Will becomes important enough to him that he's willing to suspend his pursuit of the key in order to turn on Will. We've seen it in the choreography that he tries to disable Will even when Will doesn't actually have the key, which is good tactics, yes, but also may speak to Norrington's deep-seated resentment of Will as the guy who took Elizabeth away from him. And then here, with Jack's words, it all bubbles up to the surface and suddenly Will is fighting for his life. I mean, again. Which is a fascinating decision on the part of a character who has generally displayed such high integrity and generally lawful good tendencies, right? But there's very little in terms of close-in shots to sell that to us. There's no chance to see the emotion behind it, and there's almost no dialogue after that point, which could have sold it to us a little bit better. That there's very little dialogue from Norrington would work fine, because perhaps he is overcome by his emotions, but there's no dialogue from Will at all. And that, combined with the lack of close-in shots to show us their faces and their expressions and their emotions, just makes this part fall flat. It could have been a really powerful moment, and instead it just feels like a convenient device so that we can set up Will and Norrington getting onto the wheel and Jack being on the ground so that he can be picked up by said wheel. We see Will fighting for his life in the background, but Jack is the focus of the shot. I said I wasn't going to speak to the choreography specifically in this video, and this is why. It doesn't matter a lot of the time. There is some nice looking stuff going on in this section on the roof, but they could be doing anything up there as long as it looked vaguely martial. This section in the background on the beach is slightly more noticeable, looking vaguely martial. Twirling, twirling, twirling towards freedom. But Jack in the foreground is our focus in this shot and every shot he's in, and the setup for the next section is all that matters. Never mind giving this returning character from the first movie a chance to work through his issues on screen and increase our empathy for him. Nope, we need more Jack being Jack. And while Jack is tremendous fun in the first film, particularly as a reactive character because he pulls focus from the main plot in unexpected ways, that doesn't work quite so well when he is the main plot. But once we get to the set piece, regardless of how we got there, it's still a lot of fun. It's meant to be spectacular fun, and it is. We get reaction shots of all three characters, and while we do spend a lot of time on Jack, that's okay. I love the fact that we spend some time with the wheel stationary from our point of view, so the scenery whirls behind us, but we can still see the characters clearly. The whole thing looks great, and it doesn't go on for too long. Yay! And then after some more shenanigans which wind us up on the beach, Norrington runs back into the woods with the chest, and we're pretty much done. You know, I think Norrington's apparently suicidal tendencies deserved a little bit more screen time, but maybe I'm just sour because I just watched the third movie again. The problem I have overall with this fight, and the reason I think that it's patchy rather than cohesive, is that it starts weak, and while there's some attempt at the layering that went on during the first film's fights, it doesn't consistently work. Setup of motivations, excellent and clear. Open area fights, perfunctory. Character work, great if you're Jack. Character work, not if you aren't. Choreography, some good stuff. Choreography, mostly too far away or too close in to see properly. Dialogue, occasionally snappy. Dialogue, practically non-existent. We show off the beautiful locations, we have some fun with swashbuckling, the wheel set piece in particular looks fabulous. It's not bad by any means. It's solid, it's fun, people's motivations are clear, there are some really gorgeous looking bits, but the perfunctory opening section, the missed opportunities for character moments, the minimal, generally uninspired dialogue, all combine to make me think, I mean, it's not terrible, but it could have been amazing, and that's just frustrating. If pirate-related fights are your thing, then I do have another video on the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, or if you would like to see all of my videos on movie fights, then there should be a playlist on that side of my face as well. Thank you to my patrons, as always, for being wonderful and lovely, and I'll see you all next time.